Being 8:03, we'll call the meeting of Finance and Administration Committee meeting to order. And in full disclosure, before Melissa calls roll call, when the agenda came out, I did have a conversation with Steve because I didn't feel I could comment on some of the issues because I wasn't involved in some of the infrastructure stuff. So I asked Steve for his comments, and Steve and I reviewed the agenda. So he's not going to make a motion, he doesn't want me to vote for it, but I will mention some of his comments as opposed to some of the things that I may not understand. So I do have some of his comments and his wishes. He asked me to express them, if that's all right. Melissa?
Steve Byrne will be absent. Ron Stanko.
Here.
Bill Jenks.
Here.
Dave Reeser.
Here.
Keith Durr.
Here. Public comment.
Two things I have. Number one, the issue of you guys just voted to have the audio video material 2 business days before the meeting. That poses some conflict because the agenda is only supposed to be 24 hours before the meeting, and what I have noticed is Melissa posted 2 days before the meeting, which is fine, it's nice. But we still have the time that the material is due coincide with the time when the agenda is published. So now, nobody that wants to make any comments on agenda items and needs to post, so you understand what I mean. If I want to do something with video, audio on agenda items, I cannot do it because I don't even know what the agenda is. Correct? So 2 days before at 12 o'clock, agenda is due. So agenda is published, and exactly at that very time, the audio video material is due. So we need some gap over there. The administration has requested initially 24 hours, which to me it sounded reasonable. I don't know why we can't do that. But even then, 24 hours is what the law in Pennsylvania asks for agenda. So I think we have to clarify here to give some reasonable gap to the public to say, okay, here's the agenda. If you want to make some comments and you want audio video for it, you have X amount of time to do it before they're due and time is closed. Make sense? We cannot have the audio video at the same time with the agenda. So that's one. The other thing is, Mr. Hartman, you were not here at Economic Development. There was a meeting in the library right after the meeting, and I wanted to bring that to, public discussion. How was that conforming with the Sunshine Act? There was no executive meeting. There was just a meeting. I know. Just saying. I'm just telling on you, on them. I'm sorry, telling on them.
Public Works were in there with their boss.
They were interviewing a candidate.
Okay, well, we didn't know.
Well,
So.
you didn't need to know.
Well, I don't know. I'm a little guy here. I don't know the law, but there was.
Well, you better sit there all day, because you're reading through all day.
We'll see.
That is.
So yeah, well, that's so. Are there any?
See, things haven't changed either.
Are there any
I think
public
that-
documents or anything regarding to that meeting? Yes, no. So it was just for interview purposes. That's one. That's
They were
one.
Personnel
interviewing
matter.
A candidate.
Yes.
All people should understand that.
The fact that they were all wearing highlighter yellow should have been self-explanatory.
And we weren't there.
Yes.
No.
And not a
We were
single
not- we were not
elected
there.
official was in that room.
Oh, yeah. He said, Jana, we meet in the
No,
library.
Janet and Bill were meeting in my office, but that is
Now,
not a
another
forum of
issue.
council.
Okay, all right, thank
Yeah.
you.
So,
I think one of the issues is on the agenda that you want to
Correct.
talk about, that you brought up in one of your emails, so we'll address that later. Any other public comments?
I think the police department should get more money.
You think the police department should get more money?
That's non-biased opinion of mine.
Okay, well, duly noted. Okay. Phil?
All
right, at the end of February, cash and investments totaled $9,391,000. That is a decrease of $423,000 since the end of January. That's very typical for the month of February. The first quarter is low in revenue flows. As taxes are collected, we'll see that flip. The pending grant for the police computer equipment that was pending at the end of January was received during February. At this time, we're waiting for reimbursement on the bike route in the amount of $7,400. Interest rates ticked down just a bit. Tompkins fell from 4.85 to 4.75. Pliggett remains above 5%, but you can see a very small decrease there with those trends. When you look at the Pliggett activity, $4 million remains invested with staggering terms between July and October. From the class account during February, $250,000 was redeemed for operations. That is now sitting at liquid at 5.13%. Pliggett prime at 5.46%. We still hold $3 million there plus accumulated interest. The total Pliggett balance at the end of February is $8,403,000. Year-to-date interest earned for Pliggett and the bank together totals $70,000. Way too early in the year to determine if we're going to have any budget variances there. Interest incurred year-to-date is $3,000. So our net interest through the end of February is $67,000. When we look at the Pliggett rates, you can see all the liquids are above 5%, and the terms don't drop below 5% until March of 25. So that's a little bit of an improvement over what we saw at the end of January. The drop below 5 actually had occurred earlier.
Doesn't
So-
look like the Fed's gonna
so
start cutting
it-
this.
I think people are planning for a slight decrease, but it might not have been, might not be as severe as anticipated.
You're pretty good with cash flow with new taxes coming in?
We are good. We are good. 750 was redeemed in January, 250 in February. So we've eaten into Pliggett just $1 million, and now tax receipts are starting. So we're in a good position. When we look at the activity in February, very little of note. Real estate taxes totaled just $6,000. Other local taxes $188,000. And we did advance on the note to correspond with construction at the Public Works Garage in the amount of $218,000. Revenues for the month of February totaled $965,000, bringing the year-to-date total to $2,521,000. It is a positive variance when you compare to the prior year because the current year includes the note advances. Versus budget, it's $64,000 less than anticipated. I do have February budget information included now. When you look at expenses, the only transaction of note was payment on Bolton payment application number 2 for the garage in the amount of $191,000. Expenses for the month totaled $1,744,000, bringing the year-to-date total to $3,892,000. It is more than the prior year, again because of construction, and it is less than what had been budgeted. That construction continues to occur, but it's not quite as far as we had hoped it would be at this time of year. On a net basis, for February, again, the expenditures exceeded revenue by $778,000, bringing the year-to-date deficit to $1,371,000. Again, because of construction, it is more than last year, but it's actually $95,000 less than what I had anticipated with the February budget. When that $1,371,000 is deducted from the beginning fund balance, we have an overall fund balance at the end of February of $10,082,000. 3.1 of that is reserved for future commitments, leaving unreserved fund balance of $6,971,000. There are no open permits at this time, and the grant reimbursement we talked about for the bike route is another $7,000. So including the pending activity, the unreserved fund balance would be $6,978,000. Already included in fund balance are accounts receivable of $685,000. Look at the reserves of no, these are the budget variances first. Budget variances, during February, as work continued on the pedestrian bridge, I've included those estimates as a budget variance. That was something that we had not anticipated. We thought that was going to occur in '25. Also, the street bids were open, and infrastructure has recommended to council that we take, it's construction ministers for street work.
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Yeah, compared to budget, we have a positive variance of $332,000. That number results from the budget, which was the engineer's estimates, and the bids as they were actually open.
Steve mentioned 128,000.
That's the use of that money.
Is that part of, well, he said the budget difference was 128,000.
Now, the budget was a difference between $1,125,000 and street work of, I believe, $776,000.
Basically, the low bid came in 330-ish under what we
In total.
budgeted. Yes.
Okay.
Use of that excess already approved in December was a contribution towards the Spring Township Wet Lawn Interceptor work that needs to be done of $102,000. All the other items listed there as variances are items to be discussed on our agenda, so I've referenced the agenda there. If we were to approve all those items, we could potentially add to the deficit of $2 million, we would add another 174. So the street underage is being allocated to other projects,
Oh, so, okay, the 128
is in there.
is in here.
Those three green items total to
Okay.
128,
Okay.
okay? When we look at the reserves at the end of February, just 10,000 was added to the MS4 reserve, and there was engineering costs incurred in construction for the pump station. So the change in the reserves for February was just 9,000, bringing the total to 3,111,000. Little change there. Any question on where we are year to date?
There's nothing, any warning signs, but it's pretty early.
It's too-
in the
it's
year,
too
nothing,
early.
yeah.
It's too
Okay.
early. Real estate taxes for the month of February, the only receipts came from the county for delinquent taxes of $6,000, bringing our year-to-date total to $34,000, less than last year, as well as the budget. It's all a matter of timing. At this point, we're just collecting taxes from the prior year. Anything that was uncollected for the '23 year was turned over to the county for collection in January. The new bills were actually mailed March 31st. Many of you probably received in your mail on Saturday, the tax bill.
Not March 31st.
February,
February,
29th.
yes.
they got it, we're at March, as of March 1st.
I'm reporting for February. They were mailed at the end of February, received some of them on Saturday. Monday morning in our Dropbox, there was actually some payments. So payments will
People
be
have been
starting.
coming in.
So payments are starting.
Cash.
Local taxes for the month of February totaled $188,000, bring the year-to-date total to $393,000. It is a positive variance, primarily due to some timing issues on the mercantile tax. It is less than budgeted, primarily due to EIT tax. Look at the detail for the month of February, real estate transfer tax totaled just $8,000, while January and February were recent lows. I've already, actually this morning, the real estate transfer tax for the February activity was received, and that totaled $137,000. So that included one commercial property, that was the sale of the shops at Wyomissing, and that generated $116,000. So
You may wanna note that as a footnote.
I will
at some
put a
point.
footnote there. I literally got that notice Tuesday after I had emailed the committee, so,
What did that sell for?
23 million,
23.
yeah.
Oh,
And,
yeah, you might wanna footnote that on.
and the tax
Yes.
generated was 116. So I don't believe at this point that's excess revenue that we can allocate to other things, because the sluggishness in the residential market, we really need those kind of commercial things to even reach budget.
There's one prominent property going to settlement mid-March, not to the tune of 23 million, probably closer 8 to 10 range, but it'll be something,
So that might generate 40,000 or something.
yeah.
Earned income tax for the month of February totaled $131,000. We have already received the March receipt of February activity that totaled $492,000, bringing our first quarter total to $728,000, just about where we were last year. We did reduce the anticipated budget from 3.2 million to 3,125,000. So if we stay on this pace, we will likely be very close to budget. Mercantile tax for the month of February totaled $15,000, bringing our year-to-date total to $99,000. That is more than last year, and again, it's all a matter of timing. The mercantile tax collected thus far is actually delinquent tax from '23, and you can never really anticipate those numbers. Lastly, local services taxes for the month of February totaled $33,000, bring the year-to-date total to $102,000. I'm sorry, year-to-date total with the March receipt of 102 will bring the year-to-date total to 139, very even to where we were last year. Any question on revenues? No? Okay, an update on the expenses then. Public Works Garage, during February, we did make payment on Bolton application number 2, along with the soft costs for engineering and observation. The advance for February totaled $218,000. That brought the note balance to $813,000, with year-to-date interest of $3,000. Bolton application number 3 has been approved by the Infrastructure Committee and will be before council next week for approval, the amount of $181,000. The payment to Berkey of the construction administration of $10,000 was actually in this week's check run, together with engineering and architectural fees that have already been paid. I am requesting an additional advance, number 5, in the amount of $200,664. That is something that will require a motion by the committee.
Need a motion and a second to approve the additional 200.
$200,664.46.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
Keith, can I quick add something underneath this? I had a call yesterday with Stan Tech, which is the consultant assigned by the state to review our budget for the RFP grant. There's an additional resolution we're gonna need to adopt likely at council next Tuesday. Because of the state's now understanding what we're doing, withdrawing off the loan instead of taking the money out of our reserves because of the interest rate difference. So Econ Partners is putting that resolution together, floating it to the state today or tomorrow, just so everybody's on the same page. And the language is a bit tricky, they just wanna make sure the state's okay with it before council adopts it. So that will likely be a very last minute addition to my report on Monday for council Tuesday night, so we get everything.
Would you want finance to?
It's just,
Not
no.
Not really generally?
I don't think you need to, cause I don't even,
No.
yeah, and I don't even have language, it's just more for informational purposes. If the council packet goes out tomorrow, there will be a change under my report very early next week.
Is there a completion date projected?
December 24 this year.
So there'll be no reimbursement requests until the building's complete and we are occupied, so we did not anticipate any reimbursement during the current year.
Right. At some point early next year, you're gonna have to start looking at financing and what you wanna do with converting that short-term funding
Bridge
loan.
And for this,
No, I thought we were supposed to call it a short-term,
It's a general obligation note.
it's not a line of credit.
so that's part of the point of this resolution, is the state will not consider that as match funds unless the financing period is a minimum of 10 years.
Which by the time the funding is available, you're probably gonna be converting it anyway, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'd also like to draw your attention to the number in green. Our original budget did include contractor contingencies totaling $300,000. Included on today's agenda is a request for an additional change order related to the garage construction. So already approved, it has been $80,000 that added to the cost. An additional $50,000 is requested with agenda item number 11. So that would bring the total change orders related just to Bolton to $131,000 of the 300 contingency that we had planned.
And you may recall that infrastructure and council approved Jim and I approving change orders up to 50,000, but because this one is over, that's why it's coming here.
Keith, would you like to do agenda item 11 at this time, or would you rather just stay in order?
Sure, we can do that. We need a motion and a second to recommend the council to approve a $50,307.49 change order for the Public Works Building. I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Guys have it.
Other capital construction, under our sewer budget, 400,000 was budgeted. The bids were open, and infrastructure is recommending to council that the contract be awarded to PSI for, I'm sorry. That is to, that's not PSI, it's sewer specialty services. That's agenda item number 12. Yeah, sewer specialty services for $362,000. With a pump.
Are we doing that one now too?
Sure, we could do that one now, that's number 12.
And this was recommended by infrastructure?
Infrastructure recommended it, is going to council next week,
Okay.
yes.
So we need a motion and a second to approve infrastructure's recommendation to council to award the sewer repairs and televising work to sewer specialty for $362,062, and I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
For the pump station construction during February, infrastructure approved application number 3 to PSI in the amount of $101,000. And that is also pending council approvals next week. There was also a small amount in engineering fees that were incurred. On the Woodland Road project, that is still in the design stage.
No action required on
No
that.
action required. Just a quick update on the pedestrian bridge. You may recall that in December, a deposit was made for the fabrication of the bridge. If you've been by there, you can see that construction is already underway. During February, the infrastructure committee approved application number 2 to Construction Masters for $70,091. That has just arrived. That was actually worked through March 1st. Yes, that is worked through March 1st. Infrastructure will be reviewing that application first, and then it will go to, council in April.
Will that be finished by the summer?
The bridge, should be finished by early spring, well, I should say late spring.
So if you have a timeline with the drought season or something, you have to have it done by?
Parts of it, yes. They can only be doing anything that disturbs the creek itself between December 15th and March 15th. But there's physical things outside of that they could do. Like putting the bridge on the abutment, they can do outside of that time period.
Total capital expenditures for February included the public works garage as well as engineering on the pump station for a total of $211,000, bringing the year-to-date capital expenditures to $544,000. That's pension, so that's another item. So that's everything I have for February that I'm aware of at this time. Any questions on February results? Alright, then the next agenda item is the audit update. Turbine was here the second week of February, that concluded on the 8th, their field work. They're currently working on their statements. All the accounting records are fine. They did identify one billing error in the sewer utilities, and they will be presenting that at the next meeting. They'll be presenting their results on April 4th.
You review that before the council meeting, or before the finance meeting with them? Their results?
I'm 100% aware of the results, and then they present it to the committee on the
Okay,
4th.
so there's nothing between now and then that you wouldn't know about, or
No.
you know everything?
The Auditor General Office was here on the 22nd of February. Their reviews are not particularly timely. They reviewed 21 and 22. They were fine with all the financial results. They had one verbal finding for some lines that were painted that were not permissible PennDOT expenses. There was 4,500 linear feet of a single yellow line that was painted for a total of $229. I feel so much better about that.
So you have to repay that to?
It was already repaid,
They will have to-
and so that, so they, I
Job
don't know why,
security.
I don't know why PennDOT doesn't like a single
Find
yellow
something,
stripe
yeah, they have to
line.
find something.
And I couldn't even locate it, where it is in the borough. I'm sure, I asked Jim, it's not in Cambridge, so I'm not quite sure where it is. So anyway, the 229 was already repaid, so there is no other finance to report. For the workers' comp audit, that would be for 23 actual payroll. That was actually all submitted electronically. I've had a quick phone conversation with the auditor. He just hasn't issued his results yet. And that will be a payment of the difference between the estimated payroll and the actual payroll. And there were some unusual adjustments in 23, including the firefighters' contract adjustment, which were things that were not in the original estimate. So we'll now owe the premium due on those actual wages.
It sounds like that's more of a reconciliation than an audit.
Well,
They audit the payroll, that's what they do. They
yeah,
audit the
yeah.
payroll to determine the correct
The
amount.
audit just has a different,
That's what they call it. I mean,
yeah,
that's what workers' comp calls it.
that's what they
Insurance
call it,
companies call it.
yeah. The valuation of, that's correct. The valuation of other post-retirement benefits has likewise been submitted electronically. It is now going to the actuary that works on our pensions. We expect more timely results. I just haven't received that final report yet. And that's it on the audit front.
Anybody, there's no action required.
No, not until the result, when the reports are presented, then the committee will recommend that council accept them.
Any questions on the audit? Q1 2024 MMO contribution, the budget is you budgeted $55,576,000.
I budgeted the full difference between the MMO and what's anticipated in state
And
aid.
that's in the 2024 budget.
It is in the budget, yes.
So early on this being so early in the year, I would say we should I would make a motion that we authorize to recommend to council to make the contribution in the budget, $55,576.
Second.
That was also Steve's comment. We have a motion and a second to recommend to council to make the budgeted amount to contribution. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Purchase of pagers for the fire department.
There's a request from the fire department for the purchase of 3 additional pagers. There were 4 purchased last year, 6 were part of this year's budget, which gets us to 10. That's enough for current career staff, not including any backups. So the request is for 3 additional, knowing we will be moving forward with hiring a fire chief, likely some other positions, and then we'd at least have 1 for a backup if something happens to one.
Fire and police recommended that.
Yes, I tried to get the pagers approved by relief, and per the state's guidelines, it's not a relief item because they're going to career firefighters.
But fire and police recommended this.
Yes,
Okay. So on a recommendation of fire and police, we need a motion and a second to approve the purchase of 3 additional pagers.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Starting blocks for the swimming pool.
Randy got a request from the swim team. They were notified that they need to repair, resurface the swimming blocks at the starting pool. He was asking me if I thought we should be paying it, and I said frankly, no, I did not feel we should be paying it, as it only benefits the swim team, no one else. But that said, I said I would bring it to the finance committee for conversation and a decision.
Steve's comment was a firm no. We don't pay for half the bats of Little League Baseball and use our facilities fields. Same with soccer. It's a bad precedent to set if we do. And I would
I agree.
concur with Steve's recommendation, so I think we should recommend to council not to approve this. Deny the request.
Could I just ask a question? Are any of these activities that require these pieces of equipment part of recreation?
No. So the only group that uses those blocks is the swim team.
And who pays, is that a separate organization?
Yes. Kind of like Little League or the soccer club or the lacrosse club.
Putting the library equipment and stuff. Okay. I'll make a motion that we recommend to council to deny the request. We have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Assistant Public Works Director, recommendation to move salary to $90,000.
This is coming out of the personnel committee. I presented at the personnel meeting in February. Greg's hit the 1-year mark in his new position on February 13th. He has done an outstanding job. In addition to that, the contract changes in the Parks and Maintenance contract for '24 lead to an hourly rate for the leads. They're actually making $3,000 more than him without any overtime being factored in. So the request was to bump his salary up to $90,000 from the current $77,250.
What did you budget, Phil?
We didn't. This is in one of the,
So you just budgeted his salary plus a normal wage increase?
But there's still a significant gap between him and Jim.
Jim's around 102.
Yeah.
Did you talk to Jim about the new number?
Jim was at the personnel meeting.
Did you talk to him prior to the
Yes.
personnel meeting?
Yes, and I mean, as part of doing Greg's review, I said to him, knowing what the contract for '24 looks like, this is where I was going to put him at 90,000. Do you think that's fair? And he said, yeah.
Keeping in mind.
And I know he talked to you yesterday in the parking lot. I don't know why he didn't share that with you, but yes, Jim and I talked as part of doing Greg's review.
Keeping in mind, unless something's changed, Greg is probably your next public works director.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean, 16.5% increase is,
Well, but I
In
don't
industry,
think,
you
I don't
don't
think
have
it's
any-
based on that, I think it's more based
Well-
on, he's been here for 1 year probationary period, and what's Jim's retirement plan within the next 2 or 3 years?
I'd say 3, safe assumption.
So,
Not a great job.
you don't wanna,
We don't wanna lose them,
yeah,
stay
He
competitive
brought a lot
with,
of input
the
personnel
other
about what he was
municipalities.
saving too.
Yeah, he was saving us that plus a lot more with his discussion.
I would recommend that we approve, based on Steve's comment also, I would make a motion that we recommend the council to approve the wage adjustment.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor, aye.
No, never.
Opposed?
Actually, no.
I'm right on the board on that.
Doesn't matter, you're outvoted.
All right, I'll say opposed, I'll say opposed.
Okay, majority,
And not a personal issue, it's a principle issue.
understood. Recommend the council with one objection. We did number 11, we did number 12. 2024 unfunded public works, discussed the request to utilize $128,000 of 2024 street improvement under budget. I'll just mention, Steve and I talked about this, and this is where I got confused with that. I think during infrastructure, Steve asked infrastructure to keep the request of whatever they were gonna use under 100,000. But in lieu of, the street televising, the televising of the sewer project coming in $32,000 under budget, Steve said he was okay with the 128, but doesn't want to dig into the 32 beyond that. That's what his comment was. So, not being privy to that, I would have to go along with his recommendation. So, based on that, I would say we should recommend the council to approve the $128,000 additional request based on the under budget from the street project and the televising of the sewer project.
The truck was one of the items off our capital held list. It
Yep.
was truck number 22 under the water fund.
Right, which was noted on your,
Just to make a general comment on this, yeah, we came in, how much did we, we're
300.
300, and, it seems to be going real quick.
It's gone.
More than
Go
one
on.
is
Uh,
negative one
You know,
before.
and in doing all this, we're gonna need, and I told Steve this, one, if not two, at some point, chief's vehicles, and some other fire department stuff that hasn't been brought up, at all. And that needs to, at some point, be addressed.
can you not cycle through some of the used police vehicles for some?
We're looking to see if that can be done, but they're pretty, right now, we can give the deputy chief's car that Rick Chartle has, give that to the new fire chief, and he can use, the deputy chief can use the fire department pickup truck.
Because, you don't get much value out of the police vehicles when they're
No,
sold.
they're all like 150. I've talked to John about this to see what he has, and I said, you got something coming up, just, take care of it, because we may need it.
Well, the fire certainly won't put on as many miles as the police.
Right.
So they should be able to utilize some of those cars versus selling them for
I agree.
$5,000. It doesn't seem like you need a new vehicle
Yeah.
for that project.
But I'm just, we've kicked the can, I know with fitness equipment and so forth for the fire department, we kicked that can down the road for a few years like we have with everything with public works, and I just believe it's time, police department's gotten a lot of what they wanted, public works is getting a lot that they want, when's Santa gonna visit the fire department? Is all I'm getting at.
But he drops off some more money.
Yeah, well, I agree with you there.
Where are we, Melissa? Did we, I know,
You made a motion.
did we make a motion? Did we get a second?
I'll-
We have a motion and a second to recommend the council to approve the request for the $128,000 expenditure. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Berkshire Heights Playground.
This is coming out of infrastructure. I brought to their attention, we have the $250,000 grant. Total project cost estimate of $330,000. The $80,000 was not budgeted for the project to move forward this year. I'm gonna be honest, I still do have concerns about staff managing this on top of the multiple other projects and grants we have going on in '24. But the request from infrastructure was for finance to consider moving forward with the project this year with the understanding the $80,000 match is unbudgeted.
And that's, Phil, is that part of the $174,000 deficit that you already highlighted?
I have, all these agenda items are on that pending
Item number
portion.
14.
Yeah.
Steve's recommendation was that we've been talking about it for the last 5 years, it's time to do it, basically comes from the underbudget, Steve's recommendation also.
I'm sorry, you finished.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is the Berkshire Heights playground open every year? I thought we had closed that some years ago.
We closed it for maybe a week to do emergency repairs to equipment, but it's been open ever since.
It was closed because it was in disrepair.
Well, it was unsafe.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Didn't comply, right?
Right.
This would bring it into ADA compliance.
Well, it would also upgrade all of the equipment, the attenuating surface underneath. I mean, everything's getting taken out and replaced with new equipment, new surface, and ADA access and parking to and from.
We're putting Band-Aids on top of Band-Aids over there.
Not now, not with this.
No,
No,
this would
not
be a,
this, but we have been,
Problem.
you know, and I'm gonna make a motion that we move forward with it.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to recommend to council to move forward with the playgrounds project, $330,000, of which $80,000 is unbudgeted.
Just ask a question.
Question.
With regard to the Berkshire Heights playground, is there supervision there during the summer? Do we have a playground leader there?
there's no float program at that playground.
I guess
sorry?
that's what I was trying
There's
to
no-
ask earlier.
There's no playground program at that playground. The playground program is held at Happy Hollow and Wyomissing Hills.
Well, I know, but that's because there isn't one, not because there wasn't one. There's always been one. Is there a reason to have, if we're putting all this equipment in there, do we not need supervision there for, how many kids are at Berkshire Heights playground, or is it just for show?
I would assume it's like most playgrounds where the neighborhood children use it with their parents.
Well, my point is, I don't know how many kids are over there now. There used to be a lot of kids. Now there's a lot of kids' parents are there that are 86 and are out on the swings often. So
They might
who's there? Well, if we're gonna put all this equipment there, I would think we have an obligation to make sure that we don't have kids on this playground equipment like we have them at Happy Hollow, because they can get injured at Berkshire Heights just as easily without supervision.
Well, we don't have somebody monitoring Happy Hollow 24/7,
Well,
only
but
during
you
the
do
playground
during the
program.
time the kids are there for the programs.
But again, we don't have a playground program at Berkshire Heights, so we wouldn't provide supervision in
Right,
terms
but
of kids.
is there a reason for us to have supervision there now that we have a playground with kids? What, there's no kids, or we just don't supervise?
We don't
Well, it's a
we don't
public playground.
supervise the other playgrounds,
Yeah, we do.
not
Well,
during
the
the,
kids-
not
The kids who are in Berkshire Heights.
all day, we have,
No, I'm not talking
No,
about all day. I'm
can I
talking
finish,
about
Ron?
Same time.
right, let me finish it. Playgrounds are supervised when their program is going on, which is normally till
9 to
12.
9 to 12.
1 o'clock, something like, after that, they're not supervised either.
I understand. I'm
So,
asking, why are
there's
we
no
not
difference.
doing that for Berkshire Heights?
Well, that sounds like an issue for a rec board.
The kids from
This is an
Berkshire,
issue of whether we're gonna replace the equipment or
No,
not.
I understand.
So, I think if you have a concern with that or you have a recommendation, I would suggest you take it to the rec board.
the rec
This
board
is-
has discussed that.
This
with
is,
the
this
rec.
is as it relates to replacing the equipment that's been in disrepair for several years, and they, as Bill said, they've been patching it. So, Bill, we have a motion and a second to replace the equipment using using a grant and $80,000 of unbudgeted funds. We have a motion and a second, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Right, we'll be very-
one abstention. Ayes have it. Yeah,
You don't have, you
I
don't
think
have
I-
any legal right to abstain.
Why not?
Is there a limited number, there are limited reasons for which somebody can abstain, and
What reason would you like me to give?
conflict of interest.
He swings on the swings over there, doesn't want to get involved. Can we move on?
Well, I think I would interpret Ron's vote as a no.
No. About that.
Is that no, you disagree with what he's saying, or?
What I All I'm saying is if we're to spend money on a playground, and we have playgrounds that are serviced by playground leaders, it would seem to me that they're connected. To have a playground with all the equipment, $300,000 worth, there, that we should give some thought or make a recommendation to the rec board that they consider, or maybe they should tell us, hey, we need a playground leader here. But it just seems counterintuitive to have a playground with the same stuff that the other playgrounds have and not have supervision.
Like Keith said,
We have
that's a
motion-
different meeting.
Yeah, so I would recommend you talk to the rec board about that. We already,
Yeah, all right.
we're moving on.
I'll mention it.
We had a majority vote to recommend the council to move forward with the project, correct, Melissa? Okay. Number 15, the letter from Ron.
Chris, you wanna take this one?
No, from Western Birds.
Brave man to come to this
Oh,
meeting.
from Western Borough, yeah.
Western Birds,
Yeah.
right.
Well, I think this is an infrastructure committee topic, but I understand it was requested to be placed on the agenda.
Infrastructure, they moved it up to finance, didn't they?
They suggested that finance
Right.
discuss it.
Infrastructure.
From infrastructure up to here.
Infrastructure couldn't have seen this letter.
No, this
No.
just came out yesterday.
Yeah, so I recommend we move this to infrastructure.
Back,
Checkmate.
infrastructure moving it up to us, now we're moving it
Well,
back.
the question for finance is whether to reimburse Western Berks. But the item on the agenda is about ownership responsibilities for the pipe. So I'm not sure they're related, but they're not exactly the same question. The question of ownership of the pipe, I think, is an infrastructure committee topic. The question of whether or not to reimburse Western Berks is a finance committee topic. So I'm not sure, what are we talking about today? Are we talking about reimbursement, or are we talking about ownership of the pipe?
Well, it's both on the agenda.
Giving the reimbursement, does that obligate future?
My agenda just says ownership. Oh,
Well, the
Yeah,
question,
there's- it's been amended.
okay, I don't have the latest agenda, sorry.
Is this it?
The question, our position is that we do not have ownership of that pipe, Western Berks Water Authority. That any future repairs on that would be shared by Wyomissing and Rawa. This letter, which I don't know if you even saw, just came out yesterday,
Yeah.
I apologize, but,
Well,
I think,
I would agree that Western Berks does not own the pipe under the bridge. I have seen no evidence that would lead me to believe that Western Berks has any ownership interest in that pipe. What I think the documentation that exists reflect is an agreement between Western Berks and Rawa to maintain an interconnection point that will provide emergency water access to the system that includes Wyomissing. So the issue about the pipe is, I think, an issue about, well, ownership of the pipe, but also the availability of water to get to the interconnection point. I went over this again with Jim Babb this morning, and the interconnection point is on the Wyomissing side of the Tolwakin Creek.
at the meter pit,
Right.
at the meter pit.
And so Rawa has agreed to maintain their side of that point of connection. But
Agreed with
then-
who?
What's that?
Agreed with who?
Well, the agreement between Western Berks and Rawa is that they will share responsibility for that point of connection.
Right up to the meter pit.
At the meter
Right,
pit.
which is located on the Wyomissing side of the creek. But then, what is puzzling is that there would be a pipe on the Rawa side of that connection that would be owned by the borough of Wyomissing. And there's a letter, and I don't think it's in this letter, it's in the prior email from Malin to me that says that that's a Wyomissing pipe under the bridge. But that's inconsistent with how it's always been treated. You know, Jim has said, it's always been his understanding, the pipe under the bridge is a Rawa pipe, and that Rawa oversaw the replacement of that pipe when the bridge was rehabilitated a few years ago. So Rawa has behaved consistent with being responsible for that pipe. So what it appears to me is that Rawa is now trying to avoid responsibility for future repairs for this, and was in fact seeking to avoid responsibility for the repair that has just been completed by asking Western Berks to help pay for half of it.
Well, they're paying half, and
Yeah.
and out of cooperation, just expedite this going, because our position is we don't have any say in this at all, but we're willing to spend $50,000 for it.
And I would add, I don't think it was Rawa that suggested that we split the cost. I think it was Chip and the Western Berks board that saw that this wouldn't get done unless we helped out. And we did it when we heard, the infrastructure committee say, we need this pipe. So it was, we had no contractual obligation to do it. I think it was just in the spirit of cooperation that we stepped in to try to help out.
I don't wanna fight about this, but
Yeah.
the agreement about emergency services is between Western Berks and Rawa. And that is to provide water to the system that Wyomissing receives water into. The Western Berks has no ownership of the physical pipe, but it does appear to me that the agreement for emergency water supply, it obviously has to be, it has to serve a purpose, and so the purpose is to get water from the Rawa system to Western Berks, or from Western Berks to Rawa. In order for that commitment for emergency water supply to be fulfilled, the facilities have to be intact to get the water there. And so, again, I think there's an implication in the emergency services agreement that Rawa would maintain the physical facilities necessary to fulfill their commitment to Western Berks. So again, I think Rawa should have paid all of the costs of this pipe repair. But I also understand that the borough made a point to Western Berks that this was a high priority because of the project that Western Berks is undertaking at your water treatment facility, and the concern that the borough had about the availability of water supply in the event that you went offline for a period of time during that, water works rehab project. So the borough put pressure on Western Berks to make sure that this pipe would get repaired. Western Berks followed through and took care of it, and I guess asked Rawa to help pay for it, but it really was ultimately Rawa's responsibility. Now, I got an email, I had a conversation with Ed Stock, solicitor for Rawa, about this. He says that he thinks it's a matter of dispute as to who owns that pipe. I don't understand where that's coming from. I asked him to provide me evidence that Rawa is not the owner, and he said he would do that. So again, I think there's a legal side to this, and there is a practical side to this. The legal side is that Western Berks doesn't own the pipe under the bridge. There's also a legal side to this, that Western Berks has assumed responsibility, I believe, for providing emergency water supply, to Wyomissing through this, emergency water supply agreement.
And we disagree with that.
Wait, what,
Okay,
I guess I'm
I'm
confused.
gonna have to say something now, because, you know, I'm hearing we, they, me, Dave, you're like right at the edge, and I'm talking to you as president of council. I think you really need to remove yourself from these discussions.
Why?
He's intimately
He's on the.
knowledgeable.
He's on the board of Western Berks Water Authority.
Well, but he's
So
making,
is Chris, I mean.
yeah, I mean, they're just making comments.
All right, then let Chris say, Chris,
I mean-
I don't agree with that,
Okay.
but I'm not
What
gonna
is the
speak, any
purpose?
Chris,
Well, what
Chris
is-
can speak as well as I can. Go ahead, Chris, I'm not gonna say another word.
Well,
I
what
don't
is the
agree with that
purpose?
motion, but
What is the purpose of the reciprocal water service agreement if it's not to provide a water supply for all of the Western Berks
It's,
distribution systems?
it's for emergency water supply when the plant has issues providing water from Tupac Creek or Blue Marsh,
Right,
right?
right.
The Warren Street pipe is Rawa's, let's just go with the idea that it is Rawa's pipe, and it's a water supply from Wawa. It's not our water supply. And I don't think that Western Berks can be responsible for every source of water coming into Wyomissing. That just, because Wyomissing is its own water system. You have your own PWSID. And that necessarily puts certain responsibilities on the borough. We have backups in place in case we're not able to supply water from our sources, right? And I think that's the limit of it, this implication that we're somehow responsible for every backup supply to the borough, no matter where it comes from, is unreasonable.
But this point of interconnection is part of that mutual.
It is,
service agreement.
but our agreement with Rawa only goes as far as the meter pit, it does not include the pipe.
You need that pipe to get water to Berkshire Heights. So how are you gonna provide water to Berkshire Heights if your plant is
That-
down?
Well, we have other ways. I mean, we have water stores, we have tanks, reservoirs elsewhere to
So
get
that
water.
would be the way you provide
And-
water
and-
to
and
Berkshire.
Keep in mind, we're talking about catastrophic events, right? This isn't like a regular thing, it's not like a small water main break. We're talking about catastrophic events that would require, the use of this other pipe. You're talking about a small portion of the borough. At some point, because the borough owns the water system and has responsibility for it, it has to be up to the borough to take care of some of
So
that
you're
stuff.
saying this agreement is unnecessary?
No, I'm saying the agreement's necessary. I think it doesn't apply to that pipe.
Again, there's nothing expressly creating a duty in the written agreement for Western Berks as to that pipe. But I'm suggesting that there is an implied duty by both Western Berks and Rawa to keep that pipe in a functional condition. However, again, this is an argument I'm making.
Right.
But from a practical side, I have a concern that Rawa has not managed that pipe in a way to ensure that we have the availability of that emergency water supply. And in light of that, there may be a benefit to the borough to ask Rawa to convey ownership of that pipe to the borough in order for the borough to be able to make sure that it is maintained properly so that it is available for the emergency water supply. But that would be a change in the status quo, because from all the information that I have, it appears to me that that is presently a Rawa pipe, and therefore I believe Rawa had a duty to maintain that pipe at Rawa's expense. And I believe that Western Berks didn't have a duty to pay for that pipe repair, but did so in part because of the urgency that the borough expressed to Western Berks about getting a pipe repaired.
So why would you want to take it over?
Because I don't trust Rawa to make sure that it is maintained in the future.
Rawa has no interest in that pipe at all. It doesn't benefit them at all.
Well, I think they have a duty to maintain it, but they
I
have-
agree completely, and I think that's between the borough and
But
Rawa.
that's in the letter.
Also, Keith, I mean, the Buttonwood Street Broadwalk connection for West Reading has been out of service for 18 months.
Mhm.
And that is important to both sides, Rawa and West Reading, and they're not in any urgency to fix that one either.
So who's taking responsibility for that?
There's nothing happening on
Is the letter that we received yesterday, am I reading it correctly that they're saying, okay, you know, yeah, we'd like Wyomissing to help defray the cost on this, but, we'll go ahead and split it with, you know, Rawa and Wawa will, defray, you know, split the cost, but moving forward, there needs to be more clarification. Am I understanding this letter?
that. Well, that pipe doesn't, I mean, that letter that we received yesterday doesn't expressly say, please pay us $50,000. I don't, that's not in this letter.
No.
But it is saying that it's Wyomissing's responsibility to take care of future maintenance of that pipe.
That's future
And
maintenance.
legally, I don't see that that's an accurate reflection of my understanding of the facts. However, on a practical basis, I think it's something that the borough should consider because I think this is a valuable piece of infrastructure for the borough. The Rawa doesn't care about it, and I think, I don't like the idea of just waiting to see what happens with that pipe in the future. If it's not maintained, it may not be available again when it is needed in the future. Rawa is likely to make demands about payments for repairs if it breaks again. And to me, the best long-term solution is to have control of that pipe so that it is available for use when and if needed. That's my recommendation, is to not reimburse Western Berks for the pipe work that's just been done, but to request Rawa to formally transfer ownership of the pipe to the borough and have the borough maintain it going forward.
Should we not have an engineer or somebody look at that to determine what the long-term liability issue might be
Well,
for
that's why
ownership?
I said at the beginning that ownership of the pipe, I think, is an infrastructure committee issue. The reimbursement of Western Berks is a finance committee issue, but it is tied up in this overall issue.
So at the end of the day, is it cheaper to own it, and what's the cost of maintaining it, and then having to fix it whenever, if we're the only ones that own it? Or does it make more sense to enter into a relationship with these guys for some number that we don't have to worry about fixing it or maintaining it?
I don't think Western Berks has any
They can't
desire.
fix and maintain it because they don't own it either.
Well,
If
that's
we do the
what
preventative maintenance work
If you
on
had
it,
to- If you had to split the baby here, how would you do it? And wouldn't that make sense?
I don't think Western Berks has any
Bristol
desire
goes
to
with
be
it.
involved.
We have no.
And we weren't the ones who repaired the pipe. It was
So is it
entirely
repaired
Rawa.
now?
Yeah.
But it's done.
Well, see,
Yeah.
Yes,
that's
it's
why
finished.
I think if we control the pipe, we will be able to minimize future expenses because we can take care of it and know that it's taken care of. If we don't control it, Rawa may or may not take care of it. It may break again, and it'll cost more because at that point Rawa will seek to extort money from us.
How much does it cost to buy the pipe?
Well, I think they'll give it to you, I don't think they want anything for it, but from a financial side, my only comment would be that I would want somebody to look at it and say, what's the potential ownership cost of the pipe. You know, what, is it a $5,000 a year maintenance fee? Is it $10,000? Is it, if it breaks again, it's gonna cost you $500,000? I just think someone should look at it, give us a professional opinion as to what ownership costs are involved.
That
Why
pipe,
don't we kick this to infrastructure and get a cost on, and then table it here, and then kick it to infrastructure to
Well,
get
I
an
think-
engineer's report?
I think you have, I don't disagree with Chris. I think it's a good idea that we own the pipe. It certainly resolves the issues going forward and doesn't require any agreements. We would just own the pipe, and Rawa probably is more than happy to get rid of it, you know, for no dollars. But I just think before you enter into an ownership arrangement, you want to know what the potential long-term liability might be.
I would just like to add, I think there's a middle ground, a halfway, where you can, instead of owning the pipe, if you don't want to do that, I think it's entirely possible to have an agreement with Rawa for, you know, cost sharing of future repairs of that pipe and maintenance. So just something to consider. I was also wondering, what's your reason for recommending not to reimburse Western Berks?
Because it's not the borough's pipe, and the
It's not
borough
our pipe
did not
either.
have the duty to repair it because the borough did not. So again, I think,
Well, if you look back and say it's not our pipe, that's why we're not paying for it. That's
mean,
easy.
it's-
If you're saying going forward,
Okay.
that pipe, your pipe, my pipe, their pipe, we have responsibilities theoretically to do something if something happens. How do you make this go away without just looking at the past, look at the future?
Well, the problem is if we don't own it, then who's gonna maintain it? And if we're in an agreement with Rawa that we're gonna share the costs, but nobody's maintaining it, and we don't have ownership of it, to make those repairs on an interim basis so that we don't have a major breakdown, I don't know how you do that with an agreement as opposed to ownership, which is, I think, Chris's point.
So do we know who's gonna maintain maintenance?
It's not us.
There is
Well,
no
it's like
maintenance.
The owner is going to maintain it.
There is no.
Yeah,
So
I know,
if we
what
take
happened-
over the pipe, then we would maintain
I
it,
get
and
it.
do preventative
Saying
maintenance
If
on
we
it.
maintain it, it's gonna cost money.
well,
If
the-
we
want-
we
you wanna
don't,
be able
who
to use
does?
it?
as I understand, the reason that
Raw is supposed to, but
my understanding, the reason it broke recently was because there were leaking valves, water getting into the pipe, and it froze and broke. So that to me was a maintenance deficiency, and that's the type of thing that I would hope that we could avoid if the borough has control of it and can make sure it gets drained so it doesn't freeze and break. I just want to follow up on Chris's point about the reimbursement aspect of this. And again, you know, it's entirely up to the borough how they want to handle the reimbursement issue. But, you know, my thinking on this is that it was a Rawa responsibility to repair that pipe, and Westerberg's volunteered to pay half. Well, really, it sounds like you went to Rawa and asked them to take half responsibility as long as you were willing to pay.
I don't know exactly how it worked out, but it was kind of in the spirit of that cooperative agreement that we do have, saying, hey, let's get this done, we'll work with you.
But I guess my point would be, Western Berks decided to split the cost with Rawa by whatever discussions occurred. The borough had not been asked, if we make this deal, will you pay? Instead, you made the deal and then came to the borough and asked for reimbursement. So I don't see this as a duty on the part of the borough, but it is a request by Western Berks, and it's up to the borough whether they would honor that request. But I don't think the borough has a legal obligation to reimburse.
I'll agree with that, and not to be over sentimental about it, I mean, I guess we wouldn't have done it if the borough, the infrastructure committee hadn't really asked us to step in and help.
And I acknowledge
So-
that, I acknowledge that.
So, I mean, we're certainly not demanding the money, we think it would be nice if you split it with us.
Well, it
But,
costs
you know,
$200,000 to fix it.
Roughly 200,000,
Yeah.
Rawa's 100,
I'm sorry?
Give you a baseball bat?
Wyomissing, Western Berks we're saying we'd pay 50, we're asking the borough to contribute 50.
Just as a side note, Steve's position was that Rob should be responsible.
That's
The
not,
letter-
that's not the deal we made.
Sorry.
But the letter states
Well, it's the same thing,
that they should.
but that serves
Wyomissing,
that serves West Ray.
down and negotiate.
Who should?
Rawa and Wyomissing should negotiate what to do. The other issue is the $50,000. It's two really.
Two separate issues. Correct.
Two separate
I
issues.
agree.
Two issues.
I still think we should table this and until we get an engineer's report for the infrastructure.
In terms of, well, that's not, yeah, so that is on the agenda. The agenda is the potential ownership. So there's a motion to table the issue of ownership of the pipe, future ownership of the pipe, and kick that to infrastructure. I'll second that motion.
Is infrastructure.
This is just to further discuss the ownership, the future ownership of the pipe. We have a motion and a second to move to table the issue at finance and move it to infrastructure for the potential ownership of the pipe.
I have
We
a
have a motion
question.
and a second. We have a question.
Will this letter go to infrastructure then?
We can make sure that happens, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It was my understanding it went to the whole.
It went to council and
Full council.
finance.
But-
The request of Chip was to send it to finance, anything
Right.
that goes to any committee,
Any
council
council.
is copied on.
Oh,
Right.
So now it will go to infrastructure with council copied.
Got it.
Right.
We have a motion and a second to move the ownership portion of this agenda item to infrastructure. All in favor? Aye?
Am I allowed to vote?
Yeah, well,
I'm gonna defer.
Well, on the ownership issue, yes. On the reimbursement, I would say no.
and in terms of the motion for the reimbursement, just my opinion, I think that has to be a full council discussion as opposed to a committee discussion. I just don't know that a small portion of council, I just don't know that a small portion of the committee with a small portion of council being present should be making that recommendation. I think this is a bigger issue that sets a precedent for the future. I just think it should be discussed in full council as opposed to. So my recommendation would be that the issue be moved to an agenda item for council to discuss next week at council with no full recommendation from the finance committee.
Basically, 6 people from council here, or 5.
No, there's three,
No,
four.
there's four. We know Steve's position on it.
Steve's position was that Rob
Yeah,
should have
Steve,
ownership.
that's right, 5.
No, Steve's not here, I can't vote for
No,
Steve.
he's already told us, we were sitting there.
My recommendation is to have full council discuss the issue. I think it's too big of an issue for the finance committee and a small
I'll
representative.
second that.
The motion and a second to table the $50,000 and ask it to be fully discussed at a council meeting. All in favor? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I don't think you voted on the first motion.
Yeah, we did. We did a motion and a second. We had a motion and a second
I
to
did a
move the
motion and a
ownership
I
to,
don't know that there's a vote, that was my only
oh, yeah, there was. I think, Melissa? Yes.
point. Okay, sorry.
Back to move that to infrastructure. And this is the motion to table at finance to move to full council.
Is there any recommendation in the first motion to this engineering talk about involved, or is that something?
I think that's good. That's infrastructure. Yeah, I mean, that was my recommendation, but that was, I'm not on infrastructure, so I think that's what, for those that are involved in infrastructure, that would be my recommendation, is that someone understand the full long-term liability issues of taking over that line.
So if
If any.
if that motion goes through on the first part, should it not have some at least,
Well, not if you're tabling it, we're not making a recommendation.
well, we're asking the infrastructure to look at it, since we had a robust discussion about what we think someone should do in engineering in the future, should we at least put that in there?
Are you
so-
going with infrastructure?
Well, I know, but I'm not on infrastructure.
Jen. So Jen's gonna make sure it gets, Jen's gonna make sure it's brought up. Where are we at?
You need to vote.
Well,
So we have a motion and a second on the floor to move to discussion of the $50,000 reimbursement to Western Berks, tabling and finance and moving it to full council. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, that'll move on to council. Kick that one down. Was that the last agenda item?
No, we're still making agendas.
Oh, sorry. Oh, wait, we have a question.
We have these two motions. They're going to be talked about separately by council as a whole.
And infrastructure.
And by,
Correct.
so do we need to not go around, here so that one's not recommending one thing and the other?
That's up to council.
I think they're two separate.
They're two totally
I think
separate
they're
issues.
I'm also
independent
not
agreements.
gonna bring it to infrastructure, because I will be traveling.
We can make,
Make sure
I
it's
have
on
a
the
call with
agenda.
Jim
I'm
McCarthy
gonna
at
be
10:30, I
infrastructure.
will mention it to him.
Okay.
That's right, you will be over here.
Okay. We're finished with 15.
Yes.
16.
I
Go ahead.
can take this one.
Yeah, good.
So there have been some recent instances where meeting agendas were revised multiple times and there was some confusion. So there was discussion as to how to best move forward. Generally, as a courtesy, outside of infrastructure, Melissa tries to always send the agenda out a week in advance for two reasons. One is a reminder to everyone, hey, we have a meeting next week. And two, to allow some time if anybody does have anything they wanna add to get it back to her so we can amend it and repost it. In talking from a staff perspective about what we thought made the most sense, and this will take some working with McCarthy, cause they actually put the infrastructure agenda together, not us. So this will take some working with McCarthy for infrastructure to get it out sooner. But the idea is we will continue to send the agenda out preferably, and in most cases, a week in advance, with the understanding if somebody wants something added or revised on the agenda, they would need to let us know 3 business days before the meeting. So that would not only address Mr. Jadek's public comment requirement, well, audio-visual requirement, because if it's 3 business days in advance of when the meeting is, he will have a full 24 hours from that agenda is posted on the website to get any audio-visual public comment to us, if that makes sense and you're following.
Yeah, but I also think if the audiovisual addresses an item on the original agenda, then you don't get an additional amount of time simply because other items on the agenda were revised.
Well, I mean, 48 business hours is 48 business hours before the meeting, no matter what. So the meeting date's not changing, while the agenda might.
But if there's something last minute and it was on the original agenda, then
Yes.
you have that time period, you don't get additional time.
Right.
So the motion would be to approve the deadline for any agenda revisions prior to a meeting being 3 business days, with the understanding if somebody misses a deadline, they can always come to me, I can add it to my manager's report. We can have standalone items on the council agenda if need be, preferably not, but in cases of emergency. We could have standalone items on the council agenda outside of committee discussion, otherwise, kind of like what what Keith is talking about with council as a whole discussing something, not just it being a recommendation coming out of this committee.
So is this, do we need a motion because it deviates from what was already established? I don't think anything's changed.
Yeah, I mean, right now, as long as it's 24 hours advance notice, you could email me and say, I want this added to the agenda.
So.
This would be setting a 3 business day. So like for today's meeting,
Trying to
if,
move back to deadline,
Yeah.
to set the agenda for the committee meeting.
Okay.
How about as an illustration, this letter came out yesterday,
that's not amending the agenda,
so that's okay, right? You're only talking about the agenda.
correct?
Questions?
I have a comment, and I'll bring this up before. First of all, refresh my memory, is this computer tied into the borough computer?
It's connected to the server.
Okay, connected to the server. I have a real problem with somebody bringing in a
We don't
thumb
allow
drive.
people to do that, period.
Okay.
That's in our public comment policy, you are not allowed to use our equipment, anything. You can send us as like an email attachment, but people are not allowed to put thumb drives in that computer.
And they can run the attachment through
Yes.
Word antivirus or whatever.
Yes.
Okay, well, now you're getting above my computer. I just, I don't think people would intentionally wanna do it, but I don't wanna see our equipment infected in any way, shape, or form.
Obviously, I don't either.
And, personally, I don't see if somebody wants to present something to council, they should bring 7 copies and distribute it amongst the council members, like has been done. I don't see bringing outside and putting it on the computer as a safe haven for us.
What if it's a video?
No, it's a video, you can't.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, I mean,
No problem if you send it.
same thing,
We're talking,
Keith, to answer your question, if it was a video, same thing, you send it to us
Right.
as the public in advance, we can
I was just
scan.
commenting that they couldn't distribute 7 copies.
Yes, I mean, unless you're
Right.
getting 7 flash drives to hand out.
Then some people get the
Yeah.
right, then 7 people get infected.
So,
Well, that's the straightest issue. Make the equipment work so when you get something, make sure it's sanitized and you put it on the system.
probably have to go through the antivirus before.
Yeah.
so Michelle, what would the motion be?
A motion is requested to, set a 3 business day deadline for revisions to an agenda, and the 3 business days would be in advance of the meeting date.
But it would only be for those items that were in the long-term agenda that was put out, and it would reset for items that would come in for agenda that would be added on 48 hours prior.
I don't get it.
You
I think
lost
that was,
me?
I think that was Janice.
There's only, if you have the 3-day rule, then that is not necessary.
Okay.
Yes. Because they're already gonna have a full 24 hours from when the agenda is last updated and posted on the website to get their comments to us.
So we need a motion and a second to recommend to council to enact the 3-day,
Business day.
3 business day guidance for
Agenda revision deadline.
agenda.
Agenda,
deadlines.
agenda.
I like
We have,
this.
I would like to ask a question.
With regard to all these deadlines, and this pretty fancy stuff we're doing now, which is immediate notice of what's on the agenda. Has the state identified any guidelines with respect to this particular issue?
24 hours. Well, your
We say
agenda,
36, are we gonna get a right to know request or something that says we're extending the rules when we can?
you can be more restrictive than state law. State law sets a minimum standard,
All right.
and
All right, so 3 days is fine, and nobody's we're not gonna get hot water. I think it makes sense, because you're getting to the point where, who the hell knows what someone's gonna bring in here? They can bring in a giant something or other that they wanna use, and it requires setting it up. We don't have a staff of 85 people. We need to give them time to deal with this electronic gizmo stuff and make it happen within a reasonable time, which I think 36 hours is, so we should be fine, right?
well, the 36 hours is in its business days, and that's for the revision of the agenda. The deadline for people to bring in the stuff they're gonna show us is 48 hours. There
Is
are
that
2
enough
days.
time?
Yeah, that's what we already have in place.
Anyway, I think it's a rational way to manage how we handle agendas and this public comment stuff. It puts a burden on all of us who are part of this machine to get our stuff done in a timely way so we can meet these deadlines. But I think it's important that we have something that is manageable for the administrative staff and that we don't make them pull their hair out.
Right.
Who can articulate
That's a big word.
the motion in a brief manner? Can you do that, Michelle?
Sure, a motion is requested to approve setting a 3 business day time frame for revising agenda items after the original agenda is sent out, and the 3 business days is in advance of the scheduled meeting date.
Will someone make that motion, recommend to council?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second.
Yeah, so-
All in favor, aye.
Then it's gonna repeat
Aye.
that, Melissa.
You get all that, Ms. Listen?
Not, tell her again.
I said, don't ask me to repeat that.
So, motion approved to recommend that to council. Do you need an executive session?
For council, yes.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Keith.
There's no action coming out of it.
What's not clear to me is that the EDAs is for them to submit,
Should be under there.
but that doesn't mean that you publish the agenda 3 days.
Yes, we
Melissa,
will, because that will be
Melissa,
the last
recommend
change to it. You know that'll be the last change, so as soon as, I mean, today's a good example, so the deadline would have been Monday morning, 8 o'clock. So at 8 o'clock Monday morning, Melissa has no changes, the agenda's either staying as it is, or she's changing it, putting the revision on the website.
So it's a little bit implied that you would actually publish this, but I would love to say is, okay, we're gonna publish the agenda 36 hours, the video stuff 48 hours.
That effectively is what we just said.
Yeah, but not just a requirement for them to make up their minds what they want on the agenda. Anyway.